Since all of you have started taking online classes, I want to share some views with you so that you can take them more effectively, and what are the things we have to take care during this period when all of us are connected in virtual classrooms with our students. First of all, why are we doing these regular sessions with teachers? Why do we need to get trained? Because there's certain things which are very special about teachers, and I think you should feel that pride in being a teacher. So great teachers never stop learning, and that is why I insist that all of you should go through a lot of training programs and empower yourselves so that you become great teachers. Now, a few quotes, to pep you up and to make you to let you know that you are great and you have a big role to play in this society. Your life has a lot of meaning. So for that, first of all, a quote by Mahatma Gandhi: live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. So that means you can never stop learning. You have to sort of carry on with your learning process, evolving, growing. Let everything you do be done as if it makes a difference. Your being here makes a difference. You're not only important to your families, you're important to the number of students who go through your classes. You affect their lives. So you make a difference to the world. So do things that will make a difference. The whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. That means mirrors they reflect ourselves. Windows are when we look out and see the world, see this vast, area that we have yet to learn, we yet have to explore. So your life should be that window. Now, I've been monitoring a few classes, your online classes, and there are certain observations I've been making also. So, certain tips that I would like to share with you on how to keep your students engaged in. Now, when you see, students who are, doing something else, somebody's eating, somebody's yawning, somebody's, moving on the chair, look into your own teaching and ask yourself, what am I doing that the students are not engaged with me? So how can you keep their interest, enthusiasm to the screen? They should be glued to the screen so that they don't miss out on a single word that you're saying. They want to look at you. So how can you keep their motivation alive? So what are the things that you can do to make it so interesting for them that they look forward to coming to your next class? It just depends on you. You are the center point at that time, and whatever you do in your class, it will reflect in the eyes, in the body language of the children. So you must remember to keep them interested and glued to you. So what can we do? To achieve this? First of all, be active and alive. A passive teacher is very boring. The moment a child feels that the teacher is not interested in a subject, the child will automatically lose interest. So teach as if this is the first time you're teaching and your life depends on it. So when you're on screen, be active. Your face, your body language should be so alive that they feel that you are with them. In fact, it's a very good medium because in class you're facing them, but there are 30 of them at different levels. Here you are at not even a 1 foot distance. So there the child should feel that the teacher is all mine. Smile a lot, because unless if you have a grumpy face and if you're tense, it reflects on the children. Once you smile, it brings warmth into a class. Dress well. Now, if you are not well turned out, the student loses interest very fast, especially younger children. They look forward to a well-dressed teacher who's looking good. Your first impression is what they will carry. Be enthusiastic. If you be enthusiastic, it will reflect on them. They'll be enthusiastic. And most of all, be prepared. Each lesson should be so well prepared. You should not have to look down at the book and teach, or look anywhere and teach. It should come from the heart. So your subject should be as if you're talking to them, and just your absolutely whole interest, whole concentration is there. So be very well prepared. Be prepared for the questions. The moment a student asks a question and you cannot answer, the other students lose interest. They feel it's not worth it. So be very well prepared with the answers that the students might ask you. Any little thing, think of it when you're preparing your lesson. What, from a child's point of view, what will be the natural questions that will come to his mind? And keep them engaged in activity. While teaching, it's not necessary to bring 101 props. No, activity means while you're teaching, okay, tell them, okay, do this, do that. Like, if you're teaching them, like I was observing this lesson on force. So now, when you're teaching force, either you have something, some experiment to show them. If you don't have an experiment to show them, there's simple experiments. What will you do if you push? If you push, you do that. The action of push, it will involve the students. The action of pressure, it will involve the students. So these are simple things. When you're doing something, the students look at you, they don't want to miss it. But if you're teaching, like that, and from the book, even if they miss it, they know it's in the book. Then last of all, keep them guessing. All the time they should, what is she going to do next? What is she going to do next? What is she going to say next? So that little thing of suspense should be there in your teaching. What is going to come next, they should not know. You should not tell them, okay children, now we are going to start this thing. I am going to talk about such and such topic. They lose interest because they know what is coming. Now, if you introduce a topic with questions and lead them to the topic, they sort of guess, okay, this is what you're leading to, and when you finally go there, they are very interested. So these are little things that you must bring into your teaching. Then you give them a lot of pre-reading activities. First of all, you must give them some videos to watch, because there's such fantastic things available on the internet. You possibly cannot do it in the class. So as a pre-reading, send them links, send them activities that they're supposed to watch, exciting things. This will reduce their other screen time, like social media, Instagram. All those things will take a backseat because they won't have the time for it. So these are things that they should do in their pre-reading, and send them interesting material. There's no point sending them written material, they will never read it. So pre-reading activity should be either videos of experiments, or interesting stories, or if you're teaching say literature, then something that is animated so that they watch. But remember, you have to watch it also. You cannot go to class and say, did you see that, and stop at it. You have to ask them questions on it. Okay, what was he doing? What did you notice in that? What was the result of the experiment? Why didn't this happen? These questions should come to you. So gradually they'll know, oh, the teacher knows, she is going to ask us these questions. So that is why we must read this, otherwise we won't be able to answer. So ask them a lot of questions on what is pre-read. So half your lesson is done. Once you ask them, they've done the pre-reading, and you ask them and then they've answered, that means they have understood somewhere. Half your lesson is done. Get them to respond on the chat box with just one letter. Now that's a very nice technique. I in fact saw it in one of the webinars, and what they were doing was quick. This is what I'm saying. Do you agree with it? Type yes. Now you don't have to type yes. Why? Why? There were almost 500 participants, and he did not wait for 500 whys. He said, see, all of them are answering yes. So that means he just carried on. So it added so much interest to the webinar. All of us knew that our opinion also mattered. So whether he knew me by name or not, I diligently answered all the questions, because my yes was important to me. It may not have been important to him. So that is why with the children also, first of all, if you tell them, your hand should be on the mouse, because the moment they're supposed to speak, they're supposed to unmute the audio. They don't. They're finding the audio, they're finding the mouse. Too late. So when in the beginning of the class, tell them your hand should be on the mouse. The moment I ask you, I call out your name, it should go tick, it should be on the audio, and you should click, answer and click off. So since their hand is on the mouse, it is very easy for them to respond on chat also. They just click on chat, type why, or if you want them to say, okay, which of the options do you think is correct, or did he do this or did he do this, which option, A or B? So they will type either A or B, or they will even type whether they have understood or not with a thumbs up. So that action should be quick. Now when in the chat box you see that keep the chat box window open on the side. Now you will see that a lot of children have responded same. Now if you find that a lot of children have given this wrong response, you need to reteach. So it's very important that feedback comes without having your class to slow down, or you're having to mute, unmute, ask why I can't hear you. So that wastes a lot of time. Or another method you can use is, put your hand up, give them some kind of signals. If you say yes, that means yes. If you want to say no, that means no. If you want to say I agree, you say this. Whatever, devise some signals which you can see on the camera. They will also then know that the camera has to be on. Otherwise, half the class is wasted telling them, put your camera on, I want to see you, where are you? So when you're asking them questions, you are seeing them on the screen. Then when you ask the students, we have to ask the students something, please tell them to mute themselves totally. If they want to answer, they will raise up the hand. Now when you see the hand, you will know that this child wants to answer. You can call out his name, but he is supposed to switch on his mic only after you've called out his name, not before. So set these rules of class behavior beforehand. Before the class starts or before you start, they should know that this teacher expects this from me. Now when I see the classes, there are some classes in which they have understood the rules and they obey the rules. Some are totally disheveled students. They are going all over and the teacher shouting at them, put off your mic, don't do this beta, don't do this beta, don't do this, and nobody is listening. Now another thing you can do to make your class interesting is mime and actions. So even when you're talking, if you're doing hand actions, if your face is expressive, if you're giving some kind of expressions on your talking, it may not be a very dramatic talk, but mime actions always help, because they're looking at you to see what you are doing. Now also when you screen share, don't have too much on one slide. The students don't have the concentration of look, they see a blur that there's something on the slide and they're hearing you and they're thinking of something else. Learning is not taking place. Have few points on the slide, and after that it should be your explanation. So which means you have to be well prepared, you have to know what to say. Most of the teachers, they tend to sort of read from the slides. Just assume that the student can read. If the student can read, you don't need to read. You have to explain, you have to talk about it. Now, if all this, what I'm saying, was on the slide, would you have cared to see the slide? No. These points are there for you to just register that these are the points she's talking about. For me to remember that these are the points I'm supposed to talk about, but not as a reading material. So use a lot of facial expressions, hand movements, because this is what keeps the students engaged. And I've seen a lot of teachers teaching with this movement. It's so distracting. So please don't teach, because you just get involved seeing the book and you're doing this, and this rocking thing puts people off to sleep and it's irritating to the mind. Also, now the days have gone when you are going to teach each lesson separately and go page by page, paragraph by paragraph. Even the assessments are going to change. I've been telling you this, assessments are going to totally change. So teach the lesson in totality. explain the concept. The written work and all those things will go on subsequently. Also, the things that you think are not important, you can sort of just gloss over them, just tell the students, but don't need to go into details. Okay, write this in question 1, question 2. No, as long as the students have understood the concept and you've taken that assessment where you know that all students have got the concept, it's perfectly okay. Now this is especially for the primary section. Weave stories around lessons. It need not be an English or Hindi lesson only. Even a maths lesson. It brings interest. It's not that everything you have to weave into a story like Once Upon a Time. But weave stories is, say something which is not that particular topic, and yet the student has to guess, oh, she means this. So even if you're adding, say in maths you're teaching addition, if you say, so and so went and he went to a shop and the shopkeeper gave him, 4 bananas, and he gave him for 10 rupees. Then he came back home and his mother asked, 10 rupees, 4 banana. Yesterday I got one for 3 rupees. And the child laughed. That's all. The child laughed because the mother had miscalculated. Mother had actually paid 12 rupees. Let the child guess. Why did the child laugh? The child laughed because his mother had paid 12 rupees and he had got 4 bananas in 10 rupees. So how much did his banana cost? 250. So this is what you are supposed to do to ignite that interest in a child, where he has to use his mind. Maintain that little suspense, wonderment. So these are the elements that you should get in your lessons. Now, I've always been telling you, do not give. Whenever you give, the other person thinks that, it's my right to take, or even if you don't take it, she has to give. Help them explore. Never tell them, go to a class, okay students, today we will be doing lesson 3 and that is compound nouns. No. Don't start with the book. Don't put on this thing and just talk to them. Have you heard, we've done nouns. These are the names. Now, have you heard, if I say raincoat, what is rain? Rain is the name of something happens, so it is a noun. Coat, you wear a coat. Now, what is the connection? Is raincoat a one word or two words? 2 words. Does it mean rain and coat? No. So it is the coat that you wear for the rain. So it is one word. So when you have these 2 words which become one word, what is it? Some student may answer, some may not answer. Now if you don't get any response, then you say if one thing joins to another, what do we call it? No answer, doesn't matter, lead them to it and finally tell them, when 2 things just mix together, they're called compound. You'll study that in chemistry later on. When you grow up, in science you will study. Compound is when 2 things join. So similarly say in English, when 2 words join to make one word, it is called a compound noun. So little thing like that would add interest to it. If you say, students, we are going to do compound nouns. Child has no idea what compound nouns are. Then you will explain the definition. So it's a boring way for him, and in between he'll start sharpening his pencil and he'll move and he'll miss what you're saying. But when you're animated and you're telling them, rain and coat and what we wear and tooth and brush, so all this drama will keep him glued. So he will listen. Now find tools on the internet to make lessons interesting. All of us do not have so many teaching aids. Now these webinars that I told you to attend, you must have noticed they mention so many sites and tools to make assessment interesting, to make teaching interesting, and that is why I have told Rupali to make this presentation also for you, to let you know where to go and find what. Now again, like teacher in online teaching is an entertainer. You are the actress, you are the director, you are a one package entertainer, and with that you have to impart knowledge. So our role, can you imagine how important our role is, how important we are, and how many people we are influencing with our creativeness. It gives you a lot of sense of importance. So become that teacher. Now, another way of keeping up interests of the students. Why do students come to school to study? Really not to gain knowledge. They are coming to school to meet their friends, to have a nice time, to get away from the parents, to get away from the nagging of the mother. And what do they enjoy most? Like in school, if you notice, Wednesdays they enjoy most, because that is clapping time. That is, they get that feeling that they've done well. And assessment gives them that same heady feeling. So that is why assessment is very important. Now in online classes, there are no final exams, way off. I don't know whether that will happen or not. The regular tests can't be taken. Their marks are not exciting because they're not getting marks. Nobody is getting that feeling, oh, I've got 10 out of 10, or I've got 9 out of 10. So how can we overcome this? Students know that this is not an incentive. Formative assessment will help us do that. It will draw that excitement from them. Now, formative assessment is not only Google Forms. Of course, Google Forms you're using, and it's a fair method. But formative assessment means day to day. Whatever I've taught, I'm asking the students. Is it, have you understood? Now, if I just ask the students, have you understood? Nobody will say no. They'll say yes. But when I do this kind of assessment, different procedures in the class, I know how much they have understood. The understanding is only visible to me by way of assessment. There are many ways of taking formative assessment. It could be a regular question answer. It could be small projects. It could be something that they have to do to deduce. It could be a simple exercise given to them. Suppose you've done a lesson, so after that word meanings, or just small exercises on this thing, writing a little precise, some précis kind of thing on the topic. So these kind of things then the appreciation comes. Somebody has done very well, so you appreciate them. You appreciate them, make the class clap, give them a badge. There are a lot of sites which have these little badges which you can pin them up on the class. So probably on that chat link, I think Rupali will be able to tell you better how you can use them. But some incentive where the students know, I've got this red heart, or red flower, or whatever you choose to do. So that will keep them interested in the class. Now, gradually, if we don't keep the students interested, your attendance is going to decline. A lot of students will say, "Arey, kya farak padta hai? She's going to give us on WhatsApp and we'll do the assignments. Our copies will be complete and that's all." So, unless they look forward to each and every class, this, gradually this excitement of online classes is going to wane. So, what else you can do to make student engagement possible is design an interesting timetable, which we are doing. We are putting in some music, some dance, some give them some videos to make. So these kind of projects make classroom content more relevant. Now, anything that is not related to you don't want to do, because it doesn't have that immediate thing of giving you any kind of feeling that I'll achieve something with it. Now today somebody tells me, I want would you want to attend a class on rocket science? I won't be really interested, because I'm not going to go in that field at all. Except if I'm totally free, I'll probably do it to increase knowledge and become more interesting in my conversation. But all these webinars are interesting me because they relate to my area of work, and I know that if I attend this, I will gain something which will make me a better educator. So that is what happens with students also. It should be relevant to them. It should be integrated. They must not study subjects in watertight compartments. English lesson, maths lesson, this is science lesson. Science is integrated in all. Science is language. In language, give examples of science. Yes, where were we? Yes. Managing students' engagements, we must build on the critical thinking skills. Now, this is one thing, critical thinking skills, no matter how much we stress on it, it is still less. Because this is one thing we have to inculcate in our students. Because when they, in today's world, you cannot do without thinking skills. With you, this critical thinking skills is the most important thing that education can give you. To think on your own in times of need is a basic life skill, and education gives you that, and we can hone the skill of developing this general awareness, which is sadly lacking in today's generation. So this is what we should aim at, and help students to make connections to the real world while teaching new concepts. Always, whenever you're teaching anything, no matter what subject, relate it to life, how it will affect their lives, how it is concerning or it's relevant to their life, so that they can find a connect and find education useful. Now, when you're explaining a new concept, explain, but pause a little and do some activity which will excite them. Then discuss, so that there's interaction. If you keep on speaking and just ask them in between, have you understood? And they either nod their heads or don't even care to do that. It's not going to work out, because ultimately they wouldn't have learned anything. They should all move forward with you. You should see that each child in the class is getting something out of it. Do not wait for the students lagging behind so much that you can't proceed, because the whole session becomes very boring if you keep on goading a student. But make sure that you make that student aware that he is either not listening or not getting, and excite him. Think of ways of exciting these children so that they also want to answer. They also get a chance to answer. Now, give them interesting tasks and badges to applaud. This is I've just spoken to you about little badges on something, some little emoji or something you can design, and make slides to increase the pace of teaching. Now, I've seen some teachers, they'll dictate the question, then they will wait, then after that students will answer, then they will give out the answer one by one. The pace is very slow. By then the student has lost interest. So that is why it's very important to have these slides. When you ask, it should be there, and after that, once they have done, suppose it's written work, display the slide and say, okay, have you written this? Have you written this? Don't worry about the child correcting it that time. Even if the child sees the slide, and make sure you tell the child that this is not going to be sent to you. So you correct it here, you understand it here. Because yesterday some child asked, ma'am, can you just please send us a PDF of all the answers? He's waiting comfortably that you'll send him the PDF and he'll copy and his work is over. No, he has to understand this. So tell them that this is the answer, this is the words that should have come. If you notice in the English Matters slides that I have made, one slide, the yellow ones, they are for the questions, the green ones are for the answers. So after they've done it, after you explained it, and they have done some work, just display the green one and tell them, okay, this is what it should have been. Now, a lot of parents also asking, give us the model answers. Now that it's a little dicey, because once you start giving the answers regularly, they'll stop doing anything. They will think that answers whenever they come will copy it down. No. So give them the answers in class and tell them, okay, this is what you should have written. If they haven't got it in class, let them go home and work their mind at it. And probably at the end of the week, give a few PDFs for the backbenchers who have not, done anything. At least they can copy and their books can be complete. So how you do it with each class depends on the kind of students you have in that particular class. Now, what are the three kinds of assessments? There are three kinds of assessments. One is diagnostic assessment, which is to diagnose or to evaluate prior knowledge. That is, before you start any new topic, to gauge how much they gathered from your previous lesson. So that is to evaluate the prior knowledge to the subject that you're going to teach. Now, before you introduce a new concept, unless they have understood the previous concept, they will not know what you're talking about. Then is a formative assessment, where as you go along, as you teach, keep assessing the children. Have they understood this much? Okay, let me proceed a little bit. Have they understood this much? So before a lesson gets completed, you would have had 2 or 3 formative assessment, not a formal one. Formative assessment is even questioning, then short, yes or no answers that you ask in the class. All that is testing, that is assessment. Then you have summative assessment, end of the lesson. Again, summative assessment does not mean making a question paper, long answer, 1 mark, 2 mark, nothing like that. Is to gauge whether the students have understood at the end of the lesson or that period, maybe 2-3 lessons, what they were supposed to write. Now, since they would probably involve more than one lesson, so just yes, no or MCQs don't suffice. So we give them some long answers. So you have to devise methods on how to assess these long or short answers instead of just MCQs, and how you're going to check it. So these 3 assessments are very necessary to know how successful you have been in teaching. Now, after you've taken the assessment, there is no point taking an assessment if you cannot do a feedback. Now, even when you were checking physical notebooks, if you took the notebooks after your 2 lessons are complete and you checked them and you diligently wrote, or you corrected them also, but the student did not get a feedback because he will not open the book to see what you have done. And since this 1 week has passed since the lesson was taught, you are now in the 3rd or 4th lesson. So you have not given them a feedback. Okay, this was wrong, this you could have improved, and that is why they are not making any improvement. The feedback has to be immediate. Whatever the student has done within a 2 to 3 day period, if you've not been able to give the feedback, there is no point doing this whole exercise. It's an inefficient method, because after this, it doesn't matter whether you do it or not. The time is lost. So it should be done timely. It should be goal directed. What did you expect the child to know? Was it spellings you were marking for? Was it content you were marking for? Was it grammar you were marking for? Was it the working of a sum you were marking for? So depending on that, goal oriented. Then a feedback should be descriptive. We all put a tick, right or wrong. That doesn't tell the student anything. If it is wrong, why is it wrong? Right? Yes, it is right. But then only a tick doesn't suffice, because the student has not got that incentive to do better. Right means you appreciate the child. Your language was good, concept very good, or what is good in it, what have you liked in it. That unless you give, the student doesn't get a feedback. And especially if an answer is wrong, he doesn't know where he's gone wrong, but where. So that descriptive analysis has to be done. It should be ongoing. It should encourage the student and lead him to self-reflection. What is it that he needs to improve? And collaborative. Collaborative is, it should go with what you've taught. See, I taught you this and you've done this. So this relationship, or what he should have done and what he has done. Now for this, there are a lot of online tools available. Please find out what are the tools which will make your task easier. You are not going to get a physical, now notebook to check. So how can you, devise methods which can make it easier for you? Now, after you've done the assessment, what to do if students are not progressing? You see that, the results are not showing. So what to do? You don't have that kind of time to now go back and take from lesson 1 again. So few things that you can do is, one is pre-teach, peer teach and reteach. Pre-teach is before you've taught whatever, you have to look at those things. Where did you go wrong? Why haven't the students, understood? Now you've taught them, but they have still not understood. So find the students who have understood. So get them into groups where they can peer teach. So give them tasks. Okay, 2 of you will make the project. He is understood, he is not understood. So 2 of you will do this project and come up with the result. So now when 2 of them connect, whatever medium they connect on, they will teach each other, and they will, both of them will collaborate. And still, if they have not understood, you got to reteach the whole concept. You have to, do it again. Now, also assessment. Assessment becomes easy when either the peer does it or self-assessment. This encourages honesty, accountability, and self-help. These are three things I think COVID will do us a great favor if we can inculcate these three things in our students. Very important for them to be accountable. Now you see a lot of students know that you cannot keep a tab on them. Gradually you will see the change coming. You will see that students will become more responsible because now they know nothing else they can do. If they don't learn it themselves, they are not going to gain anything. Now this asynchronized learning, which is learning in self-time, there is no point giving them boring kind of learning. They will not even do it. So it is better to allow the students to express what they have learned in their own creative ways. It could be projects, it could be PPTs, it could be experiences, design some presentations so that they apply themselves and then produce the results. Now, what do these formative assessments actually do? They not only measure, they increase the student's level of understanding, because when it measures and you give a feedback on it and you assess it and you tell the student that this is where you've gone wrong, and suddenly he realizes, oh, I was supposed to do this. So he increases the level of understanding. Now, how many times you ask, are there any questions after a lesson? Are there any questions? And how many times you are met with complete silence? Nobody asks you any questions. And you think you have taught very well. But is it so? Absence of voiced confusion does not mean the presence of quiet understanding. Just because students have not asked you anything, it does not mean that they have understood. So this is what formative assessments do. It brings to fore what they have not understood, that confusion. These quizzes that you give, they tell you what is actually they have not understood. So you don't need to ask the question, have you understood? You will know whether they have understood or not understood.